Hi, I'm Charlie and back, and I just watched The Lion King. But I want more! I wish I could experience the world of this movie at home. How can I do this?
Movie tie-in games, a staple of video games to this day. Although these games aren't as common as they used to be, movie franchises and video games have gone hand in hand since the Atari games with the release of E.T. for the Atari 2600. Now if we just look at the gameplay, what happened? E.T., alongside a few other Atari games, caused the infamous video game crash of 1983. But somehow this didn't prove that movie tie-in games were a bad idea. Once the NES came out, more and more movie games came out, like Back to the Future, Batman, Home Alone, The Goonies, with a lot of these games being developed and released by a company known as LJN.
What a rainbow.
And all of these games had one thing in common. They were bad. Some were better than others, like the sequel to Back to the Future Part 2 and 3, it was described as being a decent Super Mario Bros. Ripoff, as opposed to the original game where the writer of Back to the Future, Bob Gale, said it was one of the worst NES games ever created. So that's a good start as to what movie tie-in games are. The Super Nintendo was the beginning of movie tie-in games that were actually okay. Alongside these games most likely also releasing on the Sega Mega Drive, we also got some classic games that were actually good. The Disney games, specifically The Lion King and Aladdin, which both released on the SNES and Mega Drive, are considered to be some of the best movie tie-in games that existed at this point in time. Both games are 2D platformers that would go on to re-release in 2019 as a part of a game known as Disney Classic Games Aladdin and The Lion King. We still got the usual trash released throughout this lifespan of these consoles, and even into the Nintendo 64 era we got some pretty awful tie-in games. But we also got some incredible ones too. Star Wars Episode 1 Racer is widely considered to be an incredible video game. It's one of the Nintendo 64's many racing games alongside Mario Kart 64 and Diddy Kong Racing. But this game was something different. Star Wars was beginning its new series of movies, the prequel trilogy, and with these movies, the Star Wars brand became bigger and bigger, to the point where the Nintendo 64 had a Stormtrooper as one of the 4 main Nintendo characters, alongside Mario, Bowser, and Fulgore from Killer Instinct. An interesting foursome.
Kinky.
So Star Wars was a huge part of Nintendo's identity at the time. Star Wars Episode 1 Racer at the time came to the Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, Mac, Game Boy Color, and PC. I can't imagine that the Game Boy Color version is any good, but the Nintendo 64 version was the version that everybody loved. The high-speed pod racing throughout the Star Wars universe, exploring many planets that were introduced in Star Wars Episode 1. This game was loved by people from casual players of the Nintendo 64 to the super fans of Star Wars, to the point where this game was actually re-released in 2019 by Limited Run Games in a special edition. Yes, a re-release of a Nintendo 64 game was released in 2019 on real Nintendo 64 hardware. Insane. It then got another re-release on Nintendo Switch, PS4 and Xbox One a year later. This game proved that movie tie-in games could actually be good. Maybe, just maybe, we can finally get some quality games that take the IP of movies and create something beautiful.
You really think these games became good?
The GameCube, PS2, and Xbox era was the boom of kids' movie games. Pretty much every single Pixar release got a game. Cars, Ratatouille,
Finding Nemo. No!
And all of these games were published by THQ. THQ was the place to go for releasing licensed kids games, mainly working on a lot of SpongeBob games, but they also released a lot of Pixar games, as I said. They worked with Disney, Nickelodeon, DreamWorks, and more, having a holdover on the kids movie game market, just all the time. But they didn't start in this era. Their roots begin all the way in 1991 with the release of Fox's Peter Pan and the Pirates: The Revenge of Captain Hook, but the first interesting one was the NES release of Home Alone. THQ was merely a publishing company most of the time, with Home Alone being no exception. This Home Alone game was actually developed by Bethesda.
I'm not kidding.
Yeah, the developers of Fallout, Skyrim, Starfield, and more developed the 1991 classic Home Alone. They only made the NES version though. You know, the one no one liked. But THQ quickly started publishing more and more games. Wayne's World, The Mask, Disney's Mulan, A Bug's Life, Conker's Bad Fur Day. Not gonna question that one. But they eventually got to publishing all of these classic movie games. It's kind of insane looking at the companies that developed half of these games. The Monsters Inc. Game Boy Color game was developed by Vicarious Visions, the guys who went on to make Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, and then being bought by Blizzard and becoming Blizzard Albany and creating Diablo 4 alongside Blizzard Team 3. They were also the same company that made the portable versions of the Skylanders games and then made Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. Finding Nemo was made by Traveller's Tales, which was the company that went on to create the LEGO games, which are the prime-time movie tie-in games. Each major franchise got its own LEGO game, Marvel, DC, Star Wars, but there were a few ones that directly tied into a movie that released at the same time. LEGO the Lego Movie video game released for the Wii U and other more important platforms around the release of the movie, and takes the story of the movie and turns it into LEGO form, I guess? And when I say it takes the story of the movie, the cutscenes are just scenes from the movie. It would be a lot easier to actually just watch the movie, but you can do whatever you want. With this LEGO game, I decided to start the fun game called the Chris Pratt Speedrun. There are multiple LEGO games that feature the actor Chris Pratt, so I wanted to see how long it would take until he appears, starting with this game. This game he didn't voice for specifically, instead they took archive audio from the movie itself, but for some other games he actually voiced for those games. For LEGO the Lego Movie video game, it takes until the second mission in the game for you to reach Chris Pratt, as it takes his first scene from the movie and just puts it in the game. LEGO the Lego Movie video game is very similar to any other LEGO game, but so is a lot of them. Every LEGO game is kind of just the same engine with a brand new franchise chucked in order to create something different. They're fun, yes, but they get a bit old after a while. LEGO Jurassic World came out tying into the 2015 film Jurassic World, and it also features Chris Pratt. This game takes a more unique approach, telling the story of every single Jurassic Park and World movie that was out at the time, making 4 mini-games in one full game. It takes until the choice between what game you want to play to unlock Chris Pratt in this one, with you having to complete the first mission that ties into Jurassic Park before you can choose either Jurassic Park or Jurassic World.
Movie tie-in games are a staple of the past. People were getting tired of not-so-quality games being pumped out in order to coincide with the release of a movie. Now we get games like Marvel's Spider-Man and more, that are original stories that take these IPs that already exist and create something original. What are you looking at?